Hi, you're listening to Not the Girl Next Door show, and I have Gordon and Steve from Images of Eden. How are you guys today?
Great, thank you.
Doing great. Hope all's great on your end, too.
Yes, thank you. Now, tell us a little bit about the band. Tell us about the members and how you guys met, where you're from, all the good stuff so our listeners can find out about you guys.
Yeah, sure. I'll definitely take that. It's long story short, the band's actually kind of been around since 2001. Our first release was actually in 2001. Went through several different member changes, but reformed almost from scratch and sort of rebranded and kind of relaunched, so to speak, in 2016. This is Gordon, by the way. I actually formed Images of Eden way back when, but Steve and I actually met when Steve was looking for a singer to do the Born of Fire, Dead Winter Sun album. So they reached out to me, and I actually did that as a sort of a side project, and Steve and I sort of co-managed that entire release. And, I mean, as soon as we started working together, we were like, this is it. And from there, I said, okay, listen, you're an amazing drummer and you're phenomenal to work with. How about you join Images? And I think after I sent them the songs, that was pretty much it. And then we just had to go through a couple of internal changes, and here we are.
Now, where are you guys from?
Well, we're from all over the place, actually, but we're based in Phoenix, Arizona. This is Steve, by the way, and so we're based here in Phoenix, Arizona. This is what we call base camp because our rehearsal room is here. I'm here, and I co-manage the band with Gordon, and a lot of our business runs out of here. It's one of our bigger metropolitan cities compared to where everybody else lives, so it just makes sense. But I live here, Steve, in Arizona. Gordon lives in Pennsylvania. Dean, our keyboard player, lives in Baltimore. Eric, our bass player, lives in Michigan. And then Carlos, our guitar player, lives in Chihuahua, Mexico.
Oh my goodness! Well,
so
how does that work out? How does that work to get things synced up? A lot of sending emails and tracking things like.
Well, believe it or not, I mean, it came together a lot easier than you would think. It's tough when you're maybe stuck in a local environment and you got to choose from what you got right there. But this is a very special band. We got a very special message. We're very strong, and we need all the guys to have the same hearts, same mindsets. And, luckily with technology, we can reach out and broaden our horizon, to grab the right people. Gordon was with Dean already previously, and so we already had that solidified. I knew Eric from previously, earlier in my career, playing at a young age, and he was just a great bass player, and I knew he was just like us. And then we found Carlos, that Gordon knew Carlos from just some internet interaction in the past, and always thought he would be a good fit for someday having him as our lead guitar player. But just Gordon, I mean, you might be able to explain that a little bit smoother, but
problem.
It all just came together magically, and if you can insert that a little bit, Gordon.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was kind of crazy because at the time we had a bass player and a guitarist, and it just wasn't the best fit. The guitarist was an amazing guitar player, and he's been in Images since the beginning, and it just always will be a part of the family, Dennis Mullen. But long story short, within 24 hours, we kind of made 2 member changes, and we actually found the replacements for both. Like Steve was saying, as soon as I knew that, hey, we need another guitar player, I knew the guy for the job, which was Carlos, because we had actually connected about 11 years ago, and I'd always wanted to get a project together with him. We tried a couple of times over the years, but were unsuccessful. And Steve said, listen, I got the bass player for us. You've got nothing to worry about. I said, I totally trust you, so we're good. Next thing I know, we're starting to track this thing. All 5 of us are hauntingly of the exact same mindset, same direction, same belief system, same everything. I mean, we've all been in bands over the years, but none of us have ever been in a band where we've all gelled so perfectly. Mm-hmm. There's always something that needs to be dealt with or something you have to overlook. This is a picture-perfect situation, and none of us have ever had that before, but yet all 5 of us feel that way this time. It's clearly what we would call orchestrated from above.
Well, definitely, because that was actually one of my questions. If you guys all had the same musical direction and where you guys were wanting to go and where you guys obviously were coming from and wanting to reach. So
yeah.
it sounds like you guys definitely all have the same musical direction.
Yeah.
Totally do, yeah. As a matter of fact, as far as the songwriting and the material, all of our stuff is very inspirational, very full of hope, very full of strength, kind of gaining strength, inspiration, overcoming obstacles, and just sort of shining. And that's what we want to do. I mean, we want to bring a positive message and inspiration in, basically the darkest of times right now. And we're all on the same page with that.
Yeah, and we wrap that up into a metal music delivery, and it's kind of unique.
Now, is that kind of geared towards how you guys decided the name of the band, or how did you guys come up with the name of the band? Because that
was kind of funny. Long story. I gotta stop saying that because I like to ramble. Years ago, I'd been in and out of bands, and I was in a band that I was trying to hope was going to make things happen, and it just sort of fizzled, and it just didn't work out. And at that point in time, that was sort of the straw that broke the camel's back. And I'm like, you know what? I've joined bands, I've co-written, I've done all this stuff. I need to just call it a day and basically bring my own vision to life. I mean, over the course of the years since 13, I learned guitar, and I started to learn bass, learned keys, learned, working knowledge of drums, and then finally, started to dive into vocals. I'm like, look, I've been doing this a long time. Let me get a collection of my songs and my stronger songs together. I'm going to do an album. I've got a session drummer who was a friend of mine who said, I'll do it, in the studio so we can get this album going and you can get your project going, which was great. So basically it was a specific vision that I had and that I wanted to bring to life. And I didn't have a band name. I couldn't think of a band name. I was going to use an old band name that I had, but the album title was going to be Images of Eden, because the first Images of Eden album, every single song on that album was a snapshot or an image or a piece of the puzzle of this newfound sort of perfect world that I found myself in, literally after kind of winning a battle with addiction. So that was going to be the title of the album. Had no idea what the band name was going to be. It's kind of crazy because my wife was like, listen, call the band Images of Eden. Just think about it. Look at what you're writing and look at the message that you're putting forward. That is more of a band name, and it represents you more than you think. So, and she nailed it, and I was like, well, yeah, I guess that makes sense, and it took. So used the first album to form the first lineup, and, so on.
So overall, as a whole, who were some of your guys' musical influences from the beginning?
Yeah, I could say, because I've got vocal influences, I've got guitar influences.
Oh,
when
sure,
I was a kid,
anyone.
What's that?
Anyone, that's fine. Sure.
Okay, yeah. When I started playing guitar, I was a big Randy Rhoads fan, Eddie Van Halen, and Jimi Hendrix. But funny enough, vocally, Bruce Dickinson from Iron Maiden was my first one. Jeff Tate. As soon as I heard him, I was 12 years old, blown away. But what really sealed the deal for me was when I was 16, I heard Fate's Warnings, Awaken the Guardian, and John Arch, the vocalist and lyric writer. That was just vocals and lyrics and just songwriting on a whole nother level. And that was what said, listen, you need to start singing and just call it a day. So, after that, I would say, still to this day, it's my favorite album. I'm also a huge Peter Steele fan from Type O Negative.
Oh, that's one of my big ones.
Oh, yeah. I mean, did you have a hard time or not when you got the news that he passed? I felt like I lost a family member.
Oh, yes, definitely, because that was actually one of the first concerts that I had ever seen. I was 17, and one of the first concerts I had ever seen was Pantera and Type O Negative in 1994. Oh, so wow. that was a heavy, that was a hardcore.
That's a pretty cool bill, yeah.
I'm only 5'2", and I was lucky enough to be in the front row. Peter's a...
Wow.
massive individual a little bit. No, I love Typo Negative a lot, so definitely.
I saw Typo Negative in Queensryche, believe it or not, polar opposite two of my favorite bands in '95. So I thought that was just phenomenal.
Wow.
But yeah,
definitely.
Peter Steele. I mean, I think what really just kind of grabbed me about Peter Steele is, in a really dark time, it just seemed like the Bloody Kisses and October Rust albums just picked me up.
Yep.
And his vocal delivery is very low end and kind of. I don't even want to use the word dark, but the thing is, it's just the emotion that he puts in his writing, in his vocals. I just remember thinking, this is what I need. This is the level of emotion that I need to make sure that I put in everything that I do. So he kind of set the bar for that.
Definitely.
Yep. Sorry, Steve. I'm yapping.
No, that's all good.
I'm
just it's a good story for me. I didn't know some of those things.
Hey, isn't it great what we learned about each other during these things?
No, for me it was just I'm pretty old school in the sense I grew up on Iron Maiden. I loved Iron Maiden, and I loved the old Queensryche and all that, and I was really influenced playing the drums from both of those. And just really kind of built from there. But those have always been really rooted influences in me, both of those bands. And, of course, I can't, not say Neil Peart and Rush. I mean, that was my very first concert ever, and that really inspired me to play drums and music and all that. So, yeah.
Now, would you say that all of those influences kind of shape the kind of music that you guys play today, or do you guys go, because I've listened to the music and it has a classic feel, but it's like rock mixed in, bringing elements of the 90s, 80s, and now, and like put it all in one ball together. So that's the kind of vibe I get from your music. How would you describe your music?
I think you can't help but spill out a little bit of your roots.
Yeah.
When you're playing your own music, especially when you've been doing it as long as Gordon and I have, all of us, we've been doing this a long time, so we've grown a lot through the years and played a lot of music. And so, yeah, of course, some of those will seep through, and you always try to, do better in your writing. And really, Gordon wrote these songs for the Soul Rise record, and we all just kind of wrote our parts in on it. And so we really were inspired with just his writing process on this album and how good these songs were. We were just really blown away, first of all, on that. So that made our jobs a lot easier, of course, But our sound is very unique. The guitar riffs are just a little bit different. I mean, we do a collage of a lot of our influences, like I said, but Gordon probably can speak to some of the songwriting more than I can since he wrote the songs, but that's just what I feel.
And I think you kind of nailed it. And when you were asking me about influences, it was kind of funny. I gave you more of my old school influences, but in the last, I would say, 7 or 8 years, I have been into progressive metal, classic metal most of my life, but in even the first 3 Images albums were more along the lines of a progressive metal sound. But the thing was, something I can't really explain it other than there was some change in my internal wiring after the 3rd album, Rebuilding the Ruins. I started writing exclusively on the 7-string guitar. And beyond that, I don't really listen to progressive metal much at all anymore. I listen to a little more of like a modern hard rock, a modern metal, and I really love some of the modern players. Like, I'm a big Mark Tremonti fan, specifically with Alter Bridge, but even more so with his solo project Tremonti. Incredible riff writer. I'm a huge fan of Adam Dukowitz from Killswitch Engage. And, I mean, those are 2 of my favorite bands now. I mean, if I'm not writing and listening to something that I'm working on and tweaking it, and I'm listening to another band, it's probably either going to be Killswitch or Tremonti right around now. Those are 2 big ones in my, on my iPod that get pretty regular play. So I think, being influenced by, I love the low-end chunk of the 7-string guitar, and these guys' riff writing is just out of this world. So I think, kind of mixing that in with, some of the old school vocals like Bruce Dickinson and whatnot, I think that's kind of where the hybrid sound comes in, like a modern hard rock, but definitely some classic influences, which is kind of where I think we want to be. We don't want to be one side of the fence or the other, because if we're classic metal or progressive metal, there we go, we've just fallen into a little niche genre. Or if we are just modern rock, modern hard rock, we're alienating a good chunk of fans and fans of the bands that we grew up with and the bands that have inspired us. We didn't try to really kind of make this sound. This is just sort of what came out. And I was kind of scratching my head, actually, when I started writing for Soul Rise. I was like, this is so different from the other stuff. I don't know where it's coming from, but I like it more, so let's just keep going.
Now talk about the new album. You guys recently released the song Harvest Day. Can you tell us a little bit about the song and then the album coming up? Because the complete album releases August 17th. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah, this Friday.
Yeah, as far as the actual song Harvest Day, this was one of the first tunes that I wrote off of Soul Rise, actually except for All Is Now Forgiven and Only Human. But I kind of knew that it was going to be the opener for the album, and I really didn't know why I knew that, but it just felt right. As far as the actual lyrics, I'd rather not get too in-depth about the lyrics, but what I will say is this. This is my favorite, body of work when it comes to lyrics I've ever written, because they're the most personal. They are the most, I can even say I have been affected by these lyrics because I didn't really consciously sit down and write them. A lot of times they would just sort of hit me, and I would capture everything as it's hitting me. And sometimes I would just sort of feel this inspiration and just sort of type away and not even really think about what I'm typing. But what happened was the entire album, you wouldn't really know it by listening to it, but you'd have to read the lyrics. There's a narrative. It's a concept. It is a story, but every single song is a standalone song. So it's not like you have to listen to it in the context. Every song stands alone, but there is definitely a narrative from beginning to end. Harvest Day is very specific in that it is the first song, and I kind of equate it back to the day I more or less, like I said earlier, won a battle with addiction. I spent a couple days in the hospital and, was kind of clinging on, was really hanging on by a thread. And when I walked out of there, I basically looked back and said, I'm never going back. And I just completely stopped what I was doing and never thought anything else and just never looked back. But I remember earlier that day when I woke up and I was shaking, and I remember saying, my faith wasn't really very good at the time, but I always wanted to believe, and I said, listen, I don't know if you can hear me or not, but if you exist, I can't live like this one more day. You've got to either get this crap out of me or take me home. I cannot do it one more day. And I literally just meant it that day. I said, I'm surrendering to this. I'm surrendering to you. Kill me or save me and clean me up. And that's exactly how the album starts. And with the very first thing I say is, in this self-made prison, I'm dying. God help me. And that's exactly what happened. And he heard me. He stopped it. I didn't go to any kind of AA or anything like that. He basically said, all right, I am taking this away, this addiction, and it's gone. And I felt something really drop when I got into the hospital that day. And something was just really different. And this weight dropped off, and I said, you know what, it's gone. Of course, my friends who brought me in the hospital didn't believe any word of that. They said, yeah, you got to prove it to me, so shut up. But I knew what happened, and that's exactly what happened, and I never looked back, and that's kind of how the album starts. And as it progresses, it's just sort of the struggles that we go through in life, and, but just beating the obstacles, strength, perseverance, hope, inspiration, and everything that I gained when I changed, when life changed that day. And unless you've been there, it's a really difficult thing to explain, but when it happened, it was very clear that it wasn't me. So that's why that's kind of a very important song to us, to me, because it was right when I said, that's it, I'm done.
Well, congratulations. I mean, that in the album itself, that's such a positive outlook, and I understand the positivity. When you guys are on stage and you are performing your songs and all your work and all of your emotions go into it, how does it feel when you see people singing those songs that, obviously lyrics can mean something to you different, or something to you and something different to a fan, or lyrics are so widely interpreted, but how does it feel when you see, these fans and these people singing your music that means so much to you and overall?
We probably both have an answer for this one, but it really makes it all worthwhile. When you can move somebody with your music and inspire somebody in some way, shape, or form, it feels great as a musician when you can do that. I mean, that's really what it's all about, right? It's entertainment. You're moving somebody. And, that's the feeling I get. It's, we've had that. We were just playing here this last week with the Jeff Tate Operation Mindcrime anniversary tour, and, we just had a great crowd response. And we were even commenting on some people out in the crowd singing along with Shield Me, our single video song. And just we were talking about, it's really cool. People are paying attention and they like the song. That's great.
Yeah, and it was kind of surprising because the album's not even out yet, and there are still some people out there singing along with it. So you kind of know you're making a splash when that happens.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely. Now, are you guys doing a tour in support of the new album? Do you guys have plans doing that this year, or for the rest of 2018 or 2019 to support the album?
Yes, we're working on some things right now. Our booking agent is working on some things as we speak, along with our record label. But we've had a couple of good shows here recently, and just ending with the Jeff Tate show, and then we're going to be playing with Stryper in October for their tour stop here in Phoenix, Arizona. And then we got a few dates set for the Exodus Metal Fest outside Mexico City in April of 2019. But there'll be a lot more dates coming as soon as the record gets released, the radio gets a little more time, then more things will be popping up.
Now, how is the music, I hate calling it a music scene, but how is the music community in Arizona where you are? Do you guys have a large rock community, or is it pockets of maybe rock is supported here or there, or how is it there?
Yes and no, but for the most part, I mean, it's a great rock and metal city here in Phoenix. It's great. I mean, you can really kind of bring all genres through here and pack the house, really. So there's a lot for everybody out here, which is great. It's a big place. But for sure, I mean, for example, we played with the Iron Maidens, the Iron Maiden tributes, the girls. Yeah, they're awesome. And so they came in and we played with them one night, and I mean, we brought in like 1,400 people just for that show, which was not a big deal, but that's pretty good for a Friday night show.
Definitely.
So yeah, I mean, there's a good crowd out here for a little bit of everything. The Jeff Tate show was absolutely packed. So there's a good crowd response out here for all of that.
And I can tell you conversely, it was a massive struggle on the East Coast because, I mean, I live in York, Pennsylvania, but in the early 2000s, Images played a lot in the Baltimore scene, and mainly what people wanted to hear was either cover bands, modern rock cover bands, or classic rock cover bands. And if you were an original band, you didn't have much of a voice. There were minimal places you could play, and unless you were lucky enough to get on a show with a national. So it almost seems like, and it's only gotten worse out here on the East Coast. So when you look at Phoenix, this is just me sort of outside looking in, there just seems to be so much more opportunity out there and so much more of a scene, and it's just so many more resources. I mean, from a musical perspective, from a filmmaking perspective, Steve directing Shield Me and casting it, and I mean, that could not be done here on the East Coast in Baltimore or Pennsylvania like it was done out there. There's no way. So that's just my input.
Yeah, so a lot of good stuff out here.
And I've been talking with bands a lot lately because where I am, I'm in Illinois. I'm about 2.5 hours south of Chicago, about 3.5 hours from St. Louis. So I'm kind of in the middle.
Okay.
And obviously I've been going to concerts since for the past almost 30 years. So, I've seen how things have changed, and there's been a big change. There's a hole here. I live about 15 minutes from a college town, and there used to be bands coming in there when I was, in my early 20s, and the house would be packed, and I'd never heard of the band, and neither had anyone else. And, so I hear that a lot. In fact, I talked to a metal band in Brazil, and they said it's the same way there. It's the cover bands are the ones, unless they get on with a cover band, then, and that's how it is here. It's either country music or a cover band. So, and I see that a lot, and no disrespect to anybody doing the cover band scene, but I don't know. There's something a little bit twisted when original bands aren't getting the outreach and outpour of fans that they should, as compared to the cover bands. And I don't know. What is your perspective of why do you think things have gravitated towards
well, it depends on the market, and this is all business related, so it comes down to the dollars. So I mean.
Mm-hmm.
Club owner or concert promoter, they want to sell the ticket or fill the house or sell the bar, and they're going to do that when they can draw them in with a good time with songs they already know, and that's just the reality of it, and that's just a human perspective of how they want to get some business for their place. And do they want to take a chance on putting an original band in that night and then risk, not even getting 100 of those people that he would have gotten having a cover band?
Yeah.
So that's really what it comes down to. Honestly, that's it. It's just business, But if you're in a flourishing market where, the original band and they sell tickets and people come, it's not a bad deal. Like like in the Phoenix, I can understand the Midwest. I come from the Midwest. I come from Kansas, and I lived out there, and I moved out here for that reason, for more opportunity. And it can be that way there because that's just the way it is, but you can get out in a bigger city, and you're going to have some of that as well, but there's so many original bands, it overpowers the cover tune bands, and that's what it's about, and L.A. and Phoenix, I mean, everybody's chasing that dream and trying to showcase their music. And, and that becomes a whole other story. That's a whole other battle, a battle for selling tickets and get positioning on bills and playing that whole game. It's not a game I like to play, really, but you got to play it sometimes.
Right. Now, I've had a lot of bands tell me they think it's because people are quick to, everything's inundated with music. Like 20 years ago, I was excited to go to Best Buy, and a new CD came out, and I was spending my $10 as quick as I, made it to get the new CD. But now that newness isn't there, and now that excitement doesn't seem to be there. And do you think social media takes that away a little bit, or do you think social media helps bands how we are now?
I'd like to grab that too. Yeah, you know what? I totally get where you were. I remember being 13, and Iron Maiden's Power Slave came out. And I remember that was a vinyl, era for me. You get the big vinyl with the big album cover with all the lyrics. I threw the vinyl on. I'm reading the lyrics to Aces High, 2 Minutes to Midnight, the whole 9 yards. Then, go back in time and get the old releases, and it was a big thing. That was back in a day where there were not that many bands, and the releases were far and few between. So you really were anticipating your favorite band's albums coming out, because now there's so many albums that are being released all the time. It's like the market is oversaturated, and there are so many original bands, and it's hard to sift through a lot of mediocre to find something good. And that's not just with bands, but just in life. But specifically when there's so many bands, it's like trying to find something really good in the sea of them. So it's kind of hard to stand out. So I guess my point is there's so much of it now, and it's just sort of there's a lot of getting lost in it. So it's like the cover bands I'm starting to lose my thought, but I know what I'm thinking. It's hard putting it into words. Yeah, they know that, okay, if this band's playing all these songs that everybody knows and loves, we know we're going to bring so many people out now. And I think because everything is so saturated and, the days of buying that CD and buying that vinyl record, even though it's coming back, there's not the thrill of that anymore. That was a big thrill. That was a huge thing for all of us.
Mm-hmm.
And since that sort of died, there's just the internet has sort of devalued the music, unfortunately. Now, on the other side of that coin, we would not exist without the internet age because all 5 of us are in different cities,
right?
And we all recorded from our own respective hometowns, and Bill Matoyer mixed this and mastered it from Hollywood, California. This could never have happened 25 years ago.
No, exactly.
So it's definitely, take the good with the bad type
It's a
thing.
double-edged sword, yeah. I mean, they can still purchase it. I mean, you can still purchase CD. We're going to have vinyl out still, so for the old school people, we're going to be able to take care of you with vinyl, limited edition, and then we'll still have our CDs. But then it's just the world we live in, digital download. Someone wants to download your album, great. I mean, however you can get it, get it.
Now, do you think it helps as far as promoting? Do you guys use social media to promote?
That's huge.
Yeah.
Huge for us. I mean, no more paper flyers posting around town, right?
Yeah.
So, but you're doing it digitally now around the world. So that's huge. Like Gordon said, we couldn't do this without that. So there's so many things that that it's helped us with. The only thing it's hurt us with, and it's hurt the whole industry with, is just record sales and piracy and all that stuff. And there'll never be a gold record again. It's just the sad truth. But it's just the age we live in, and there's nothing you can do about it but just find ways to make that better, and hopefully it'll work out for you.
Now, what do you guys have going on? Since you guys are just releasing an album and we're in August, what do you guys have going on the rest of 2018?
Gordon?
Yeah, I think biggest thing right now is getting this thing out and promoting it. We've got a lot to do within the next 2 months. Beyond that, we actually are playing with Stryper in October, and we're throwing some irons in the fire for a tour and for opportunities in 2019. So I think the rest of this year is going to be get the album done, play the show with Stryper, and line up all of put the chess pieces in place for 2019. And I think a lot of what's going to happen as far as radio and press and in response to the release over the course of the next 4 to 6 months is really going to kind of determine how things go in 2019. Now, that being said, we are actually going to be tracking in the upcoming months the 5th Images of Eden album that's basically already written. It's always good to start early because this entire writing, recording, releasing process takes about 3 times as long as most people think it does. So the earlier you start, the better it is, so you don't have an extensively long period of time between releases, which
exactly.
Which we have had, but and the new material I feel is just as strong, if not stronger, than Soul Rise. Didn't think I'd ever say that, and even more personal. So personally, I can't wait to dive in. It's like the most cathartic and purging experience of.
So yeah, we're just taking advantage of our time and staying ahead of the game, so to speak. So if everything goes well, we're going to be pretty busy. We want this thing in our back pocket ready to go for a follow-up when we're ready to put it out.
Yeah, because we kind of feel like, we have been guided through this whole thing. I mean, at some point we're going to do a behind the scenes. We have had an incredible amount of, I'll just use the word phenomena, during the writing and recording and releasing process. I mean, we've been defying a lot of odds, and we know we've got a lot going for us, and we've been guided, I guess I'll say so. And we kind of have this feeling that we definitely need to have this 5th album sort of ready to go to pull the trigger when we need to.
Now, where can fans and listeners find your albums and music? And do you guys have a website? Is everything on social media? Where can they find your things?
Yeah, imagesofeden.com. We keep the website very up to date, and we link to all of our social media. So what we try to do, it's all over Facebook and even on Twitter, but imagesofeden.com as well. So if you want to start there or find us on Facebook, you can't miss.
Well, guys, thank you. Thank you for coming on the show today. Anytime you want to come on and share some new news and new music you want us to release, come hit me up, and we'll get you back on the show. I appreciate you guys coming tonight.
Thank you,
we
Angela.
Definitely appreciate that, and appreciate the future invite as well. We'll take you up on it.
Great. Thank you so much.